Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. Hope that you all are doing well on this polar vortexy kind of night here in the States. It's going to be cold, and a lot of places have already been kind of whacked by the cold, and hopefully that does not, I guess, continue to be a big issue because down here where I live, we're not really set up for the cold, and people tend to freak out, and our infrastructure is not really built for it. During the stream, yeah, it's gonna probably rain a little bit and then start getting real cold during stream tonight. Hey, Vipers, how's it going? This stream should be more inclusive use of America. Meso Europe? Yeah, I know. Well, the problem that we run into sometimes is our perspective is really sort of warped by where we're raised. And, Mesoamerican is just the way that I see things. So, if you see something different, maybe that's because of where you're raised. But for the night, we're going to be talking about Mesoamerica, which of course is, I don't know. That's actually an interesting question. I don't know if British historians refer to this region as Mesoamerica. The British tend to be much more strict when it comes to the two vowels separated by a consonant thing, where the first vowel is, one thing. I'm saying this backwards. Anyway, maybe they say Mesoamerican or maybe they say Mesoamerican like we do, but I don't know. Who knows? What's up, Green Herring? Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. And Tuna. Tuna, it's early. Welcome in. Hope that you're having a good one. I suspect that you might be off for the holidays. And if so, I hope that you're at least having some time to enjoy it. I saw the busts that you posted earlier. I did not know that you were giving those away for Christmas presents. That's very, very generous of you. Which just, of course, goes into the larger, basket of examples of how Tuna is super generous. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about Mesoamerica. And if you're new to the stream, hello, my name is Shane. We do stuff here that we call Adventures in History, which is really just a fancy way of me getting people to listen to me run my mouth about history for an hour and a half every other day or something like that. But we talk about historical stuff, and we do it in a way that are... that hopefully is much more approachable than the old sort of stodgy, goofy, boring history stuff. We're being visited by a puppy who hears me talking to the light box. Oh, those are going to the niece and the nephew. I see. Well, that's still those are nice presents. Very nice gifts. I know that you put a lot of work into both of those. But we're talking about Mesoamerica, and this is an interesting moment here. Previously, when we have talked about the Americas, it's been in something of a kind of a compilation stream, right? And when we do streams in the Americas, we have a little bit about North America, a little bit about Mesoamerica, a little bit about South America. And when I started thinking about, oh man, we need to do an America stream, and I sat down to think about what should we do here, it popped back into my mind that this is a really big important time period, because this sort of sets up some really bad stuff that happens next century in Mesoamerica. And then I remembered we have a whole lot of actually written down recorded history from this time period, and I said, well, maybe we need an entire stream about just the Mayans. And I do want to point this out. When we can talk about a particular century and have multiple accounts of the same events in multiple different sources that are all written down, that's a really high context society, right? This is a very advanced civilization. And I bring this up because, once again, there's this sort of predominant ideology in Western culture that there wasn't really anything going on over here in the New World until the Europeans showed up. But the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight, these two big cities of Tikal and Calakmul, that they had more people in them than London did at a contemporaneous period of time, right? We just for the first time in 400 years or so talked about Britain coming together in one sort of more or less, I guess, conglomerate culture. I don't know what you want to call the heptarchy. We're not saying heptarchy anymore. Uh, but, you know, there are big civilizations in Americas, and these cities had tens of thousands of people living in them. And they had advanced trade networks that stretched, you know, thousands of miles in every direction. So we can't just think about like, oh, the Americas were just all dumb. No, it just wasn't the same. And a lot of people don't talk about this stuff, which is why I love talking about this stuff. So, yeah, and you know, the aliens visited all of the continents. Um, Before we really get into it, you have a question, okay? Have you ever played any of the Elder Scrolls games? I've played all of them except for the first one. I never actually played the first of the Elder Scrolls games. I started with Daggerfall, and I've played 2 through Skyrim, which I guess is 6. No, Oblivion was 4, Skyrim is 5. Yeah. The reason I ask is that the games are full of mysteries, and there are YouTube channels dedicated specifically to decoding the lore. I wonder what your historian brain would make of it. I mean, I enjoy the stories, right? The world that it's set in, Cyrodiil, has a sort of a patchwork history that's built into the games, and if you do a whole bunch of digging and like go find all of the books and read all of the books and, you know, listen to all of the stuff that happens and do all the little side quest stuff, you can sort of put together a whole bunch of the history of Cyrodiil. And it's really interesting that in certain stories you'll see, or in certain games you'll have them describing a particular event from one of the sort of regions of the continent, whereas well, so you know, like in I don't even know what let me try to think of a specific example here. Like in Morrowind, right? You're in one part of the civilization, and there's a lot of dark elves around, right? And dark elves really sort of hang out in the area of Morrowind. And then you move to the next one, which is Oblivion, where you're sort of set in the capital, and you have a whole bunch of different types of people, and the events that are described in Morrowind are described differently. Well, maybe not differently, but from a different perspective, because the books that are written in the game are written from a different perspective. And to that end, I find a lot of that stuff really sort of like, I don't know, it just feels like they paid attention to the lore. And I appreciate that in games. The stuff where, you know, we've got 2 different accounts of the same event happening, and it's all sort of bias, and in one version of it it's a hero, and the other version of it the person's a villain, and stuff like that is pretty interesting. The specific mystery thing that you might be referring to, I'm not sure how far they go down into that. Some of that stuff is interesting to me. Some of it is kind of like the game designers put that stuff in there specifically so that people will try to fill the blank in. So it's a bit of a like a mental task that they hand to the gamers and say, here, you fill this in and you populate this world with these things. And that's a good sort of game playing / rhetorical device that you can use to get, you know, more brain cycles out of somebody. But I don't necessarily know if there's some overarching meta theme that the people that have worked on the Elder Scrolls games have set up from the beginning. That would probably be giving Bethesda way too much. I think they've done a lot more contiguous world building in Fallout than they have in the Elder Scrolls games, or at least it feels that way to me. I think they spend more time working on the story of Fallout, and I think they spend more time working on the gameplay and the world of Elder Scrolls, if that makes any sense. Not that they don't do both and both, but you know, there are pyramids. There are pyramids in Mesoamerica. There are indeed. What's up, Shmonite? Good to see you. Hey, Chad guy. What ancient civilizations do you think had the most impressive markets? Depends on what you mean by ancient, and what qualifies impressive. Like, I would say impressive being stuff from the widest variety of things. And if that's the case, I would say the Kushan Empire, which is something that I kind of say because nobody talks about them, but they really were super cosmopolitan. The Kushan Empire sat over here in Central Asia, roughly right about here, for about 300 years, in the like the 200s to the 500s. That's roughing it out. We don't have time to go back through the whole thing. But they sat right on the crossroads of the Silk Road, right? So stuff coming out of Europe and the Middle East and Africa went through here. Stuff coming up out of India went through here, and stuff from China went through here. A lot of really cool stuff over here, like Samarkand and Alexandria, Skate, and really neat cities in this region. Would love to go to modern day Uzbekistan, which sits like right here. Still pretty cool stuff over there. At the particular time period that we're talking about right now, which is the 8th century, the biggest and coolest market would be at Baghdad, which is right about here. But the market at Tikal would have been pretty cool as well, which kind of gets us back on track. All right, so what are our Mayans up to, and why did I have this whole sort of spiel at the beginning about why it's important that we can talk about them in specific? The Mayan civilization at this time had hit sort of their apogee, right? Their most powerful and culturally advanced point. Wasn't Baghdad the foundation of mathematics? Not the foundation of it, but they taught math in a way that a lot of people got a lot of stuff out of. But math, as we understand it, is actually something that was made up in India a couple thousand years before that. The Arabic numerals, though, that they made up in Baghdad, well, I mean, they didn't make them up in Baghdad. They were just Arabic, but they got sort of popularized there, are still the ones that we use today. So like our numbers, like when you write the number 1 or 2 or 3, those are Arabic numerals because they came from sort of that culturally height point of, I guess technically it would be under the Abbasids at that point, where Baghdad really started blowing up. Right at the end of the Abbasid, or right at the end of the 700s, beginning of the 800s. The most important lesson that the Mayans taught us is that if you don't finish something, it's not really the end of the world. That whole thing about their calendar was so dumb. And if you actually knew what the Mayan calendar was, nobody thought it was the end of the world. The Mayans had a particular view of time that time went in these sort of great cycles. And the end of their calendar cycle was 2012. And the time cycle would have just continued to go after that. But it took a lot of time and effort to calculate the calendar because you had to do a bunch of math and astronomy and stuff like that. And so they got to the end of a great age and they were just like, okay, cool, we're not going to do anymore. Like we know all the way through 2012 and we'll be okay. We've got, 1800 years of lead time. So we'll just sort of hang out there and maybe a few hundred years from now we'll pick it up. But anyway, let us actually talk a little bit about the Mayans. And at the beginning, we're going to bring up a city that we've talked about before, Teotihuacan. And we've mentioned this city multiple times. It was a powerhouse that sat right around here in Mexico. To kind of zoom out, give everybody an idea. Is a northern or well, when I say northern, I'm referring here to the center of everything, which is right around in here. So Teotihuacan being further this way made them northern. And the stuff that's in Honduras down here would have been southern. but we'll talk about that in just a second. Anyway, Teotihuacan was on the decline. And it had been on the decline during the 600s. We talked about that last time we came around the Americans, that Tikal had been wrecked. And it may have been wrecked from the inside, but whatever happened was pretty bad. The big buildings that were sort of central to the government were targeted. They were burned. In one particular location, a throne was purposefully demolished. Sort of a really good symbol there, of us breaking the government. But by the time we get to the 700s, Teotihuacan is going to be abandoned. So by the time we get to the turn of the century, between the 600s and 700s, Teotihuacan is gone. It's still there physically, but no one's really living there. What's up, JMR? How's it going? Feliz Navidad a ti. También. So, what happens, right? Teotihuacan had been sort of the cultural center of Mesoamerica. It was one of the largest cities on Earth at that time. I'm not making that up. It was like number 8 largest city in the world in the 600s. What does that do when it goes away? And the answer is, when that domino falls, there's a lot of other stuff going on that happens as a result to it. What's the real date in history, since 2022 is just the year since Christ? Shouldn't our dates be based off the humanity's start? Best of luck trying to get any system to change right now. Things are so complicated. Well, I mean, it's not even necessarily complicated, but if you change the dates, that has such a dramatic ripple effect through everything. And it's not just like we should say, like the first year should be the first date that we know that there was a city when civilization started, right? So we're going to go back to like 3400 BC and say 3400 BC is year 1, right? And everything puts everything everywhere. Yeah, the thing with the Holocene calendar, though, is that's sort of like, even that is based on speculative kind of guesswork of like where we started doing stuff like basic agriculture. But what if tomorrow we find another, piece of evidence that pushes that back? Do we then change the years again? Every time we change the years, we'd have to change like everything that involved like computer programming, because how many of our records are digital, right? How much of our data, how many websites ask you what year you were born? They would have to change that, right? So it's an endemic systemic situation, and nobody's going to change the years because it's just too hard. It would take billions of hours of work to recode everything just on internet sites by themselves. And that's not even getting into things like reissuing birth certificates for everybody. It's crazy stuff. To the programmers, the universe began on the 1st of January 1970, right? Everyone would be legal to drink, pretty much. We could go off the Hebrew calendar. The Earth is only a few... That does bring about an interesting question, though. What do we do about the people that don't think that the Earth is billions of years old, right? So 14 billion years is sort of like the round estimate of how old the Earth is. What about the people that think the Earth is somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 years old? Do they get a say in things? A lot of those people are in Congress. So do they get to vote? Do they get to decide? Who makes the decision? Is this a one country thing? Is this a United Nations thing? There are a lot of people in the United States that wouldn't agree with something that they even agreed with if it came from the United Nations, because that gives up American sovereignty. So, how would you even go about mechanizing that in the first place? Take it from someone who made serious bank during the Y2K recoding. You don't want to change that stuff. Shmanan, I made money from it, but it was sort of... Well, no, it was just purely unethical, because I told a lot of people that I was fixing their computer to make it Y2K compliant when I knew that the code was basically already going to be fixed. So I just sort of like ran scans on their computer and defragged their hard drive and charged them $50. We can't even get America to switch to the metric system, right? I mean, things are stuck. We can recast the terms, which people have tried to do now for about 50 years or so with, you know, we've changed things from BC and AD to BCE and CE. I was in high school at the time and had a very underdeveloped sense of ethics. The French tried to change the calendar. Yeah, right. What happened to Robespierre when he tried to change the calendar? There was a bit of a reaction in Thermidor, right? Anyway, Teotihuacan falls apart. And by the end of the 600s, the beginning of 700s, it is no more a thing. So what do we have? What happens? Well, there's going to be a whole bunch of cities that immediately decide that they're going to be the ones that are going to step up into this power vacuum. And the big cities of the region are going to start fighting for control. A lot of the allies of Teotihuacan are going to lose a lot of power, and the power base in the region is going to shift a little bit from, being up here around Teotihuacan itself, more to down here in the Yucatan Peninsula. And this is specifically where we're going to get to all of these. And specifically, we're going to look at two big cities. And we can kind of zoom in a little bit here. This guy right here, Calakmul, and this guy right here, Tikal. These were basically the two big cities. And you can see a lot of the cities around them they're going to trade with. Cebal is going to be something that we talk about a little bit here. Naranjo, Caracal, Quirigua, Copan. So this is sort of the border right now between Mexico and Honduras, because Copan is in Honduras. I'd love to go see it. Anyway, there's going to be a reshuffling. And our two big players are Tikal and Calakmul. And there are a lot of cities that are going to sort of line up behind these two. And I'll be really honest, if you don't have a lot of exposure to these particular periods of history, this can get really, really confusing. So I'll list allies here at the beginning in order to give you an idea of sort of where people stand. But I'm going to try to do my best as we go through the remainder of the stream tonight to make really sure that I always tell everybody where things are. And if you have questions about any of this stuff, please feel free to ask. The names are going to start getting really, really confusing, and I'm going to start referring to people after giving their names as things like King of Tikal or King of Copan, etc. Because that's going to be a lot easier for us to remember than saying stuff like Itzam Naaj Kwili, right? Because it gets very different linguistically. All right, so on the side of Tikal, its big allies are Cebal, Copan, Quirigua, and Yaxa. So that's sort of their alliance. On the other side, Calakmul has Dos Pilas, Naranjo, and El Peru. There is another city called Caracal that's in the mix, but it is a side switcher. Back during the 600s, there had been big wars between Tikal and Calakmul already, and Caracal had sort of played both sides against each other. Caracal is going to be doing the same sort of thing this time around. Caracal's kind of in it for itself, and that's sort of, what you got to do, I guess, when you are stuck between these really big dynasties and these really big powers. So what do we do? All right, well, where do we stand? So if we just look at the beginning, at 700, the balance of power was a little bit shifted towards Tikal, because at the very end of the 600s, the second Calakmul-Tikal War had ended, and Tikal had beaten Calakmul and their allies. But there's going to be a really interesting development here at a place called Dos Pilas, which again is going to be one of the cities that's involved. Now, initially, what's interesting is that Dos Pilas had been founded by the leaders of Tikal, and specifically had been founded as a way to sort of benefit from a higher population and another stop along the trade route during the big wars of the 600s against Calakmul. Well, at the very beginning of our story, Calakmul is going to swoop in and take Dos Pilas. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Bat Bird. How's it going, my friend? It's good to see you. Been rather quiet, but that's okay. I understand that world gets crazy and life gets busy. But it's good to see you, and Merry Christmas to you as well. I hope that you're having a pleasant holiday season. And thank you so much for that subscription. As always, you all's support is impressive and means a lot. Hope you're doing well, Batbird. Hope you are. Anyway, so Dos Pilas gets sort of gobbled up and taken by the Calakmul alliance. And it seems that Dos Pilas is going to take to that pretty well. They're actually going to be pretty interested in the Calakmul side of things. Just found out that you're moving. Oh, wow. That's, ooh, yeah. I don't like sudden, hey, we're moving. That, like, sudden things by themselves are kind of bad enough. But, like, moving, that's, like, one of the most stressful things ever. And sudden moving, no. I hope that all goes well. Yeah, my heart goes out because that really does sound like it sucks. Good gracious. Okay, so one of the things that I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to copy and paste a little bit because you all know how bad I get when I'm trying to type in the first place, and some of these names are very long and not spelled in English ways that my brain really wraps themselves around. So the king of Dos Pilas at this time is this guy named Itzamnaj Kawil. And he looks like this. So this is Itzamnaj Kawil. And he's a pretty big player here for a second. He decides that one of the things that he's going to do really pretty quick off the bat here. Are you moving south with this venture because the Andean tribes are one of your faves? Vodka Alchemist, welcome in. I've seen you around. I'm not sure exactly where I've seen you, but I have seen your name. Welcome in, and thanks for popping by. So the way that we do the streams here, sort of, we look at centuries at a time. So right now we're in the 8th century, and we're basically looking at everywhere in the world during the 8th century. And we do things regionally. So tonight we're just talking about the Mayans. The next stream is probably going to have some stuff from South America and North America. If you want to go back and check out VODs, we've done a VOD or a viewer request specifically on the Inca and the creation of the Incan Empire and what happened to that. And we've done several streams where we've brought up multiple different cultures from South America. The various Andean cultures that go all the way back to when they were first starting. Like some of the oldest evidence that we have for settlements in the Americas are in Monteverde in South America. Those go way, way, way far back, like 20-something thousand. So anyway, we've talked about them multiple times. So we've talked about uh, how they first got settled, several of the different cultures, the evolutions of those. So you can go find that stuff back in the Adventures in History sections. You could probably start at the very, very end of the collection for, well, here, I can just tell you what numbers they are because I have all of the files. Let me see. Ba-dum-bum. Where would we have talked about the Americas? Second century Rome. Early American cultures. Adventures in History 51 and 52. Uh, 85. I'm looking through the big list of stuff that I keep notes on the for all of these things. I'll try to keep up. 114. I know there have been more than that. I must have missed some. But anyway, you could look back through. Everything's pretty clearly labeled. The opinion hat thing ended again. I'll fix it right now. But I wish they would just let me make that unlimited. They won't. Twitch is weird about stuff. Channel rewards. Yeah, like I can only extend it 30 days at a time. I wish I could just extend it until it was finished. All right, you should be able to give back to that now. Imagine basing your entire language around the sounds you make when you stub your toe. Oh, alas. So, Vodka, I don't know if that answers your question. Well, I guess a simple answer is tonight we will not be talking about Andean cultures, but we have talked about Andean cultures multiple times in the past. So, there's an easy answer. I tend to be wordy and talk a lot. Anyway, what does this guy do and why have I put his name out here? Well, he decides to attack Tikal. So he's the king of Dos Pilas, again, and Dos Pilas is now allied with Calakmul. And Dos Pilas is going to launch sort of a crazy, out-of-nowhere attack against Tikal. So they switch sides, and now they're going to attack Tikal. And they're going to defeat Tikal in battle. And this is a pretty big moment. So much so that Itzamnaj Kawili decides that he's going... Kawil, not Kawili. Is going to build a whole new addition to the city. There's this... so the city center would be right here, and then a little bit to the north and the east, he builds a whole new plateau full of big buildings as a way to say, hey, we beat Tikal. That's a pretty big deal for a city that was sort of on the way up, right? They had recently... They weren't at that point even 2 centuries old yet, and they were already playing sort of on the big league scale, which is pretty impressive. So Itzamnaj Kawil is going to beat Tikal, build a whole bunch of cities, and then have such a well-liked... what am I going to... Like, how do you say this? People like him a lot. So he's going to have a kid, but his kid isn't old enough to take over when... Kawil dies, so there is a regent set up, and the regent's name is this guy, Uchanke'in Ba'alam, and we don't have a good picture of him, but we do have an interesting picture of his foot. Now, you're like, what are you talking about, his foot? Well, again... Our rulers are making these big stela, these big rock carvings, and unfortunately, not all of them are in the world's best shape. And you can see here, like, even the one that we have, this guy's cracked pretty bad. But this is Ucha'an K'in Ba'alam's foot. And he was referred to, historically speaking, as the leopard man, or the leopard king, because of these spots. We don't actually know what the spots are for, or the dots are. Some people think that they might be tattoos, but it's hard to say. But we know that because we can now read the writing of the Mayan people. Tikal makes me think of Method Man's first album. Oh, Wu-Tang is forever, right? Do we have a study on how battles in the okay, wait. Do we have study on how they battled? Oh, like war stuff. Yes and no. We have weapons that they left behind, but we don't have like a discussion of how the actual battles went. Like, I put my soldiers over here and they went this way, and then they flanked around this direction. None of the Central American people had cavalry because horses had not been introduced to the Americas by that point. So everybody's fighting on foot. We know that they had bows, and that they had daggers, and that they had clubs. And the clubs were very frequently outfitted with either really big rocks that were designed to like beat you over the head and club you to death, or some of them were sort of like semi-sharpened, like really dull battle axes that were kind of designed to break your skulls and your bones easier because they kind of came to a point. Obsidian was used as sharp-edged weapons, but of course those have to be replaced pretty frequently. But as to actual battle tactics or how they set up their soldiers on the field, we really don't know that. Probably just a whole bunch of people running at each other and beating the junk out of each other with sharpened sticks and rocks and stuff, which is pretty brutal. I have a piece of obsidian. Oh man, I should have brought that in here, but I didn't. Anyway, that I picked up when I was in Turkey, and it's literally razor sharp. I could shave with it if I really wanted to. I forgot to shave today. Speaking of, but anyway, wiki feet. Yeah. Anyway, so when Itzamnash Kawil dies, one of his probably generals, maybe his brother-in-law, this guy named Ucha'an K'in Ba'alam takes over as a regent. He's going to rule for the next decade or so before Itzamnash Ka'wil's son takes over. But that's sort of like the opening salvo of what happens in the first half of the century. Tikal takes a whipping. And that was really unexpected because, again, they had just come off this big victory over the Calakmul alliance, and it was kind of shocking that they get the wind knocked out of them right here at the beginning by a young upstart. Blunt weapons are more brutal than portrayed in comic books. Oh, for real. Obsidian is sharp as crap. It really is. It really is. It's freakishly sharp. It's volcanic glass. It's kind of crazy. All right, so that's what's going on in one area of the larger situation. Now, we need to move to another area, and we're going to bring up a city called Copan. Again, Copan is down in modern-day Honduras, and they were pretty big. They were coming up in the world, and one of the things that they had going for them was that even though they were in the larger Tikal alliance, they also had vassals of their own. So Tikal was like super overlord. And then, that stretched out really far, didn't it? Maybe we can push his name down into 2. Yeah, that's better. So Tikal is at the top, and Copan was a city that they had actually founded again. So this is, again, Tikal is sort of making colonies and founding cities and stuff like this. So Tikal is like the middle boss. But Copan had its own set of vassals. And the king of Copan at the time is this guy named Ohakalajun Ubaakawil. And he looks like this. Ohakalajun Ubaakawil. Fun names. So this is him. He's the king of Copan. 80s hair was crazy. Oh yeah, well, he's got a big headdress on. So this is like either a winged serpent, which is most likely. It might be a bird. I would bet, though, that it's a winged serpent. Winged serpents were really, really big. So here's his face, and this is a headdress that he has on that sort of displays his grandeur. And, of course, he's decked out in cool clothes and stuff like this. Anyway, I'd love to go to Copan. Again, just absolutely would love to go there. So the king of Copan decides that he's going to play around a little bit with who gets to be king in his vassal cities. And one of the cities that was under Copan was Quirigua. And the king of Copan decides, I'm gonna pick a person and I'm going to make them king of Quirigua. They don't get to pick their own king. I'm going to pick their king for them. Tuna resists making another Ancient Aliens reference. Is that his is that his Major Tom to ground control helmet? Do they still worship Quetzalcoatl? The thunder serpent or the winged serpent is a thematic deity throughout Mesoamerican cultures. And that goes all the way back even before the Mayans, back into like Olmec stuff and back to the very earliest ones. So did they call it Quetzalcoatl? Probably not. That was an Aztec name for it. The Aztec, of course, are going to be, at this point, probably about 500 years later is when the Aztec really start getting sort of hitting ascendancy to sort of max out right around the time, the end of the 1500s, which, of course, is about 700 years from where we're talking about. So the concept of the winged serpent, yes, and it was part of their religion, and yes, they had gods that were winged serpents. So that thematic element in their religion had been around for a long time, but did they call him Quetzalcoatl? No. Freddie Fazbear is, I don't know. What's up, Freddie? I apologize that I can't read Cyrillic. I might be able to translate that in the good old Google. But how's it going? Welcome in. Hope you're having a good one. What's up, Radical? Good to see you. That says hey. And hey back. Good to see you. I'm in Puerto Rico with my parents and your abuelos. Oh, I hope that you had safe travels. That was always getting confused. Yeah, so just like deities in like what we might call the old world have sort of thematic deities, right? If you look at storm gods especially, they're the gods that are typically associated with the storm, and they typically have lightning bolt. So you have like Baal, who is the Semitic storm god, and when you see him, he's got his lightning bolt that he's going to smite people with. And then you have Zeus, who's going to smite you with the thunderbolt. And then you have Indra, the Hindu god, who is the storm god, and he has a lightning bolt that he's going to smite people with, right? So you see these thematic elements. To a certain extent, Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, is really just kind of the same sort of mythological trope of something that gets thrown to smite your enemies that makes a loud banging noise, right? So Mjolnir is just sort of an extension of a thunderbolt, right, for Norse deities. So you have these tropes that show up across thousands of years of human history all over the place. And in the Mesoamerican world, especially in this sort of Petén River Basin, Yucatan area, South Central Mexico region, the winged serpent was basically the lightning bolt, right? So the lightning bolt kind of comes down and does that zigzaggy thing. And because it's up in the air, it flies. So that's sort of the evolution of this. And once that idea kind of gets into their tool chest, they sort of apply that over the course of thousands of years, right? So, Privyet means hello. I don't speak Cyrillic or any language that uses Cyrillic, and I apologize again that I'm going to have to dump this into Google Translate to see if I can get anything out of it. And it's probably not going to give me anything for something that long. Nope. I guess that might be Russian. Russian is not the only language that uses Cyrillic. Says, I'm fine. Cool. You don't know how to type in English. That's cool, but you understand me. That's cool too. Well, welcome in, and you're free to do whatever you can do, and I'll do my best to try to keep up. Did any industrious Mayans run a food cart selling pretzel coatls? Probably not. Probably not. I did have some really great pretzels last night. There's a pub here in my city, and I was craving like the big pretzel and mustard. Like I love eating the big pretzel with mustard. And we went and had some pub food last night, and it was excellent. I even commented earlier today to my wife that I was thinking about how good last night's dinner was. Perun is the Slavic god. Yeah, exactly. Right. There you go. Thank you, Tuna. English. Woo. There we go. What's up, Viscera? How's it going? Going pretty well. I ache a lot, but I'm doing okay. Tiana natives in Puerto Rico has very close, even matching deities like it was in Mayan from Central America. Yeah, so the Caribbean islands at this particular period of time are inhabited, but their relative level of civilization was fairly low. And that's not an insult to anybody, right? Relative levels of civilization are based on duration of time and the competition for natural resources and luxury items has nothing to do with these people are dumb or these people are smart. So relative levels of civilization, it's just a measurement, right? Just like tall or, how fast you can run a, 40-yard dash or something like that. So the Caribbean was inhabited at that point, but relative to the big cities that were in Central America, or even some of the cities that were getting started here in North America, or the ones that had been going on for several hundred years down here in South America, especially right here and right here, they were still very much hunter-gatherer. They had not really done too much agriculture at that point, but that's going to start changing in the next couple of hundred years as stuff starts getting sort of exported over to the Caribbean islands. You're going to start seeing them have more organized society. Their populations are going to start rising when they can get a grasp of their food supply and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a technological... Right, exactly. It's just technological stuff. Correct. The reason I say that, Radical, is because sometimes people use the word civilized as an insult, right? Like, oh, they're just not civilized. But uh, and even historians do that sometimes when they're being biased. They're like, oh, well, they're just not as civilized as this other group. And I always try to make sure that when I say like levels of civilization, I'm not using that as an insult. I'm just using that as a relative metric, right? Okay, so there we go. Anyway, so we've got a king who's got a really long name, Wakahalajun Uba'akawil of Kopan. He is going to dictate a new king for Quirigua. Ooh, that's the Cyrillic stuff that I copied. Not the name of the king from Quirigua. That was fun. The king of Quirigua's name is Ka'aktui. Ka'aktiliu Chanyopaat. Goodness, that's a long one. He looks like this. All right, so he gets put on the throne in Quirigua. Now, he doesn't really like Copan very much, even though they put him on the throne. And they do this in 725. And around this time, things are starting to really heat up. Tikal had sort of rebounded from being beaten by Dos Pilas. Things are getting tense. And in 734, the king here of Quirigua is going to declare himself independent from Copan. Now, that doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. Like, who cares? He declared himself independent. Well, there's a reason that's an issue. So let's look back at our map here. All right, so here's Calakmul, and here's Tikal. So here is Copan, and here is Quirigua. Right here. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, as long as Copan and Quirigua are allied with Tikal, they're sort of in a line. Now, they've got some distance between them, but, you know, they're allied. Well, here's the thing. And by the way, it's Sebal, this city right here, also part of the larger Tikal alliance. When Quirigua goes independent, that cuts Copan off from the trade network. Because now everything coming to Copan, which would have gone through Quirigua, just stops. It just stops, and it only gets to Copan if Quirigua decides that it gets to Copan. And oh boy, is that going to be an issue in just a little bit. Just a little bit. Things are going to get really messy because of that. So the alliances are shifting a little bit, and things are causing a little bit of trouble. But when the war really starts breaking out, what ends up happening, it goes back to Dos Pilas. You're part Bulgarian. Oh, cool. I would love to go to Bulgaria. I have been right to the border of Bulgaria in two different countries. I've been on the Bulgarian border with Greece and on the Bulgarian border with Turkey, but I've never been into Bulgaria because neither of those countries will let you drive a car that you've rented into Bulgaria, which is hot garbage in my opinion, right? Like, I'm not going to steal your car by driving it to Bulgaria. I'm on the hook for it, right? There's really cool history in Bulgaria. We actually, on a stream earlier in this phase, talked about the Bulgarian Empire, which really gets a big leg up during this century because they saved the Byzantines' butts, and the Byzantines have to recognize them as an independent empire and even give them land. And the Bulgarians are getting a big boost in the 800s, or sorry, the 8th century, the 700s. I'm backtracking to previous streams. Anyway, our king in Dos Pilas, who again is Uchaan Ka'in Ba'alam, he decides, okay, well, we're gonna go fight another one of the cities, and they're gonna take on a Tikal ally named Sebal. So we're going to have ourselves sort of the big opening salvos of what goes on to be a much longer war. Let me align them. So now they're sort of lined up. So Tikal is allied with Sebal, and Calakmul is allied with Dos Pilas. But Sebal and Dos Pilas are going to fight. And things are going pretty nasty here. The king of Sebal is well. How about I just show you his picture and then I'll tell you his name. His name is Yitzhak Balam, and we have this image of him, and this is an interesting image because he at this point is in a kneeling position in front of an altar. And he has been made to kneel because Dos Pilas is going to... I like the cut of his jib. Well, he is a captive at this point, and he is being forced into submission because that particular stela that I just showed you is in Dos Pilas, where they basically made him swear obeisance to Dos Pilas. And they put him back on the throne as basically a puppet. That little snake dude in the bottom left is your spirit animal. Wait a second, where? Oh, this... I think that's actually supposed to be a monkey. I don't think that's supposed to be a snake. But I know what you're talking about. That he's just got that like perpetual grimace. I feel you. Anyway, so Dos Pilas defeats Sebal and makes the king there swear allegiance to Dos Pilas. And that's a big deal because this is yet another of Tikal's alliance members that's now sort of off in the wind. And this isn't looking good for Tikal at all. So what do? What's the response? Well, if you are Tikal and you're trying to shut down a war where you're losing allies really fast, one of the fastest things that you could do is, why don't we just destroy Calakmul? Why don't we just load up the military and just go up to Calakmul and try to wipe it out? And we'll end the entire war in one big swoop. So they do. That's what they try to do. And this is a big one, because these are two of the biggest sort of Mayan powerhouses, and they're just going to go at each other. Dun dun dun, dun 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 dun, dun 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 dun. Nora1360, thank you so much for that follow, and welcome to the adventure. Please feel free to participate at whatever level you feel comfortable, and for real, feel free to ask questions. There's a lot of weird names going on, and there's a lot of weird switching sides going on, and I might go off on some weird tangent about, video games or something, but welcome in. Hope you're having a good one. We're getting pretty close to 900 followers. As a reminder, when we hit centennial marks on followers, we do streams of Middle Earth history, and we are 8 followers away from a Middle Earth history stream at this point, because we're at 892. 892. It doesn't belong in a museum. I don't belong in a museum. I'm not that old yet. What's up, Maddie? Good to see you. So, Tikal loads up. We're going to go fight. We're going to go try to take out Calakmul. And wow, do they. They capture him. The king of Calakmul at this time is a guy named Yuknum Tuk Ka'wil. And you can see him here, Yuknum Tuk Ka'wil. This is a stela where he's pictured. Well, he gets captured by Tikal, And in 736, they kill him. So Tikal takes out the head of Kalak Mul. And you go, okay, surely the war at this point is over. But it ain't, because it turns out that when you kill the king of your adversary, all of the allies that were sworn loyal to said adversary get really hacked off at you and want vengeance. How do you feel about Chechnya? Are there any episodes you've missed about that? We have not talked about Chechnya yet directly. We're going in chronological order. So we started back with developing opposable thumbs, and now we're in the 8th century of the current era. So it will be Chechnya starts being an issue with the Russians. Well, I guess it depends on whether or not you include Chechnya and Georgia, which I don't. Some people like to think that it is the same and treat the history the same. I don't. That's like it's going to, well, I mean, conservatively speaking, it's going to be like years before we get to Chechnya in the proper stream. Now, this is why we have viewer request streams. Every other Tuesday we do viewer requests, and if somebody wants to talk about something like Chechnya, you can throw that out there, and if it gets voted on and selected, we'll do it. Also, if you hang around long enough to get 10,000 adventure points, so below, you're collecting channel points, you can choose your own adventure. Or is it 20? I think it's 10. It's 10 then 20. Yeah, so you get 10,000 points, you can buy a viewer request episode. And if you just want Chechnya to pop up, you can go do Chechnya, and then we'll talk about it. I probably want to narrow that down a little bit. But we could do that in conversation in the Discord. If those of you are also new to the chat, we do have a Discord, as pretty much everybody on Twitch does, and you can join it there. You want to show me some native stuff over here. Tons of artifacts. We don't have a Rosetta Stone because... Yeah. You don't see any topic stream redemption. Yeah, because I have it turned off. I don't... The opinion hat wasn't supposed to be there. That's okay. KP, could you... No, it's fine. Could you unredeem that for Maddie? Yeah, I keep the... I keep that turned off until people get to that point. I found out after about 6 months of having that what happens is people will... No, it's fine. It's perfectly cool. What happens is that people will redeem that, and then I'll have like 8 or 9 viewer request streams backed up, and I don't like doing that because I don't want somebody to redeem a giveaway and then it be 3 months before I get to their episode. And what we do now is when somebody hits 10,000, I'll usually ask, like, has anybody got 10,000 points and you're ready to spend them right now? So Maddie, if you have 10,000 points, you can let me know and I'll put you on the list. So we've sort of got a wait list of people that are like bookmarked, and I've got it in my phone. And when we get to the point where we do viewer request streams, I'll just go down the list from the top to the bottom. I think there are 3 people on it right now. Who's on the list? Yeah, there are 3 people on the list right now. So if anybody has 10,000 points and an idea of what you want, I can put you on the list, and next time we get there. We'll get there. So all right. Anyway, so Tikal kills the king of Kalak Mul, and you're like, okay, cool, war's over, right? No. The new king of Kalak Mul is this guy named Wamal Ka'awil. And he decides that he's going to sort of stick it to Tikal as hard and fast as he can. So what he does, he starts sending emissaries to Kirigua. And he's like, you're independent now. They're like, yeah, we're independent now. And he's like, wouldn't you like to be on our side? And Carigua goes, that's actually kind of an interesting proposition. What should we do here? Sign up. We'll leave you. We'll leave you in charge. But what we would like for you to do is join the war on our side. So Quirigua switches sides. So they abandon Tikal and they move over to join up with the Calakmul alliance. And the first thing that they do is, we hate Copan. We should go attack Copan. So they do. So Quirigua switches sides, and then they go attack their forefathers, basically. And they capture the king of Copan, and they chop his head off in public with an axe. And they do this in 738. And when they get to Copan, the city, they also burn effigies of the local gods. So they basically make up these, dummies of the gods of Copan, and they burn them in the city of Copan to humiliate the gods of Copan. It's pretty friggin' great, right? So Quirigua is now very firmly on the Calakmul side, and Copan is basically out of the war. So now Tikal is like, holy crap, like we thought we were done because we killed the king of Calakmul. Like we did yeah. So what do we do? What do you do? Well, let's go back to Dos Pilas. We have a new king in Dos Pilas. So this is the son of Itzamnash Ka'awil, the guy that was the first king of Dos Pilas we talked about. His name is Ka'awil Chan Ka'inich. I don't have a picture of him, unfortunately. So either his uncle or a general had been the regent, but now Ka'awil Chan Ka'inich is going to take over as king himself. This happens in 741. He's going to start picking off allies of Tikal as well. Just like... he takes out some smaller allies of Tikal. He takes out some of the unaligned cities that might have been on the border of joining one side or the other. And what ends up happening here is that this really hacks off Tikal. And they just basically decide, we're going to wipe everybody out. Like, if you are on the other person's side, you're just going to get destroyed. People talk about cartels are brutal, but they got it from these, right? I mean, talk about a Copan mechanism. I actually almost named the title Copan Mechanisms, but I thought Little Mayan Man was a little bit better because some of these people really, really effed it up this time, didn't they? I hope everybody gets that, by the way. For those of you that are new to the channel or new in, I always try to make song puns for the titles of the streams. One of the Mesoamerican streams in the past was when Tikal was first founded. The name of that stream was Tikal Me Maybe. So, I try to make puns because that's the kind of person that I am. I'm not really serious unless I am, and then sometimes I'm too serious. I don't know. A lot of history is just like this. Yeah, it's pretty much just like backstabbing and murder and sudden but inevitable betrayal and all that fun stuff. Lauren Bacall, yeah, great actress, right? Anyway, the king of Tikal at this point is this guy, whose name is Yakin Chan Ka'awil. And he is the guy that decides to put the smack down. He is going to end the war, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. So what is he going to do, you might ask? Well, if you'll remember one of the allies that I listed earlier, because everybody remembers every single thing that's happened tonight and knows all of the names and knows all of the cities. I'm just being sarcastic. One of the allies of Calakmul was this city called El Peru, right? Yakin Chan Kawil is going to decide we're going to wipe out El Peru. So he loads up the army. He goes to El Peru. He takes the city. He sacks it. He burns it. And then he forces them to become vassals in 743. So El Peru is now off the board, basically no longer in Calakmul column. The next year, like the very next year, in 744, he decides, we're going to go after Naranjo, which was another really big Calakmul ally, right? Interesting thing about Naranjo, this is a ruler in her own right, but a regent around this time in Naranjo, and her name is Lady Six Sky. So female ruler in Naranjo, and she had been an empress in her own right, but at the time was a regent for her son. And you can see her here standing on top of her defeated enemies, because she was kind of a how do I say that? I don't usually curse on stream. She was not one to be trifled with. We'll just put it that way. She was all about establishing herself as a power base. You love your Spanish history, but you hate it also. It's difficult. It is a difficult thing being Puerto Rican. You struggle against Taino and Spanish heritage. It's even more difficult when you have a mom who is German, Dutch American. Wow. White American, also more difficult when there's mixed race people. Yeah, especially in areas where you have multiple ethnic groups and multiple racial groups. Being an interracial individual, I don't know this. This is just me. Because I've read a whole bunch of sociology stuff, I can have intellectual knowledge of this. I do not have experiential knowledge of this. I'm very clearly a white dude, right? But speaking with interracial people and having friends that are interracial people and reading books that were written by interracial people that describe their experiences, I know that that is a very difficult thing to do, because just by itself, you're literally two races or perhaps even more. And that is a big problem for identity. And then when you throw the situation like Radical here is talking about, where not only do you have multiple races that you are a part of, but each of those races also has different ethnic identities, that is even a further issue. So socially speaking, that is a recipe for a lot of internalized identity struggle. I would suspect intellectually. Again, I'm not someone that has gone through that experientially, and I'm not trying to say that I have. I can sympathize, but I cannot empathize. How about that? El Peru? What did Peru... so not Peru in South America, Peru the country. This is a city in the region called El Peru. It's in Mexico today. So Tikal also then is going to go to Naranjo and wipe them out. They take the city of Naranjo, they burn it, and they capture their king and execute their king. And that's the end of Naranjo. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And at this point, Calakmul's alliance just falls apart. Nobody else wants to stick up for the side of Calakmul because they can't protect their allies anymore. They just lost two of their biggest ones because Tikal was just going to go whip their tail. And when this happens, Calakmul has kind of a crisis of identity of its own, where it goes, well, we thought we were this big, powerful alliance, and we were doing pretty well for a little while, but we can't project our power the way that we thought we could. This is going to be pretty bad for the rest of the alliance, especially for Dos Pilas. The last king that we referenced, Ka'awil Chan K'inich, we have a record of him fleeing the city. which is sort of an interesting concept here. Like, we don't exactly know what that means, but that's in 761, and we don't have any other record of a ruler in the city after that. So it might be that when the big war ended, this, by the way, historically is referred to as the Third Tikal Kalakmul War. And it's kind of like the big one, right? So after this war, we don't really have a lot of records for rulers of Dos Pilas, because they apparently ran away from the city and never came back. So what happens as a result of this big war? Because Tikal clearly won, Kalakmul clearly lost. There's not really any gray area where it's like, well, they kind of won, but they kind of... No, it's just like Tikal won, Kalakmul lost. What happens to Kalakmul? Well, it never really rebounds. There are still people there. We still have lists of rulers that come from there. They were still doing public work stuff into the 9th century, into the early 800s. But it becomes pretty clear that they are going to basically be on a downhill slide. The public works that happened during this period of time, the post-war period, are mostly just stela. So again, these sort of big rock carvings, not buildings. Buildings cost a lot more and take a lot more effort than a carved, pillar or stone, stuff like that. There are uphill slides. Well, if you make a water slide that starts high on one hill and goes down, you can make an uphill slide on the other because of inertia. You can make an uphill slide. You just can't have as much of an uphill as a downhill. Gotcha. Anyway, I appreciate the attempt, but that one wasn't so hard. That one wasn't so hard. Anyway, so Kalakmul never really comes back. And what's really interesting about the early 800s, and I know this is getting a little bit of ahead into the next one, we actually find some of these big stela that are partially finished. Like, an artist started carving this stela and then got like a third of the way through it and just stopped. And this asks a lot of questions, right? Like, does this mean that the country, or does this mean that the kings of Kalakmul ran out of money and they couldn't afford to pay for it? Does this mean that the government was dissolving? Does this mean, what does this mean, right? These are big questions, and we don't really know. We just know that Kalakmul lost and they never really came back after this. The southern region, down around Copan and Quirigua, that area basically just goes into complete crazy. There are lots of intercity arguments and wars down there. Dos Pilas, again, is completely abandoned. After 761, we have no record of Dos Pilas being inhabited. And what's really interesting, it looks like at some point there were and the historians that write about this stuff call these people refugees that apparently moved into the ruins of Dos Pilas. And the only reason we know that this happened is because as the people were excavating, especially the downtown area where a lot of the big buildings were in Dos Pilas, they found these really haphazard constructions, like these really poorly made makeshift walls and these thrown together fortifications. And the hypothesis is that this southern region got so damaged and got so messed up that a small group of people that might have been refugees from Dos Pilas tried to use the remains of the city as like a fort, and they tried to just put up whatever kind of defenses that they could around this sort of central area where they could maybe get some some protection from the existing buildings. But that didn't even last very long either, because again we don't have any records. And this is a city that, in this same century, in 705, so this is 55 years prior, had defeated Tikal and killed their king, right? So in 50 years, this city that could do that is now just completely uninhabited and is being used as an outpost maybe for some refugees. It's just really bizarre to think about this. And probably the artist just died. Maybe so. Maybe nobody could do it quite like Jimmy, and Jimmy just passed away, and that's the end of it. And one of the things that I kind of got not mad's not the right word, but last week I watched a podcast. Vipers had posted a podcast of this guy who has recently published a book called The Beginning of Everything. And it's getting a lot of attention in popular circles. And I've got a historian buddy that has been blowing my brain up to try to get me to go read this book. And one of the things that he talks about is how in the book, people think that civilization is always an upward trajectory, right? Like once you start building in cities, you always are going to be in cities. And I didn't particularly care for the way that he described this, because it sounded to me like he was saying that he was the first person that knew a lot of this stuff, and it really isn't. But that's personal things aside. You can read the Discord commentary that I wrote about it. But anyway, this is what we're kind of talking about here, and I try to point this out whenever it happens. Civilization is fragile, right? It doesn't stay around just because we want it to stay around, right? If you had asked the people in Dos Pilas, would you like to continue living in a city? They would probably have said yes, but they didn't. The city of 13 to 15,000 people, which is huge in the ancient world. In the span of 50 years, this is one generation gone, right? Just gone. What about Tikal? Tikal is actually doing pretty well. They're sitting pretty. We have public works of their kings. This is one of their kings at the end of the period. His name is Yaxnuun Ahin. Pretty cool looking dude. Well, you can't really see very much of his face left. Here's his ear, and here's his eye and his nose. Kind of messed up because of weathering, but pretty cool stuff. You can see where this was underground. Right here, like this line where it was underground. This is much cleaner. Anyway, Yaxnuun Ahin. Technically Yaxnuun Ahin II. Ask Gold Rush participants how they felt about their ghost towns. Yeah. So Tikal's going great. That guy rules from 768 to 794, has a peaceful reign. Building keeps going in Tikal. They've got new temples, new structures, all kinds of stuff. Add some roads in. Trade is going to rebound. Tikal becomes kind of the undisputed trade power in the region. They have trade networks that go from the Pacific all the way up into the Atlantic, all the way up to where Teotihuacan was, all the way down to modern-day Honduras and Nicaragua. They were sitting pretty. How was the business then? Doing business, right? They were just making it work. So Tikal comes out of this pretty well. Pretty well. What about Carigua? What the betrayers? You might think that Tikal punished them and was like, oh, you switched sides and defeated our ally. We're going to beat you back up. No, Carigua actually comes out of it pretty brilliant because they managed to remain independent, which is kind of remarkable given what they did. Their betrayal, the betrayal of Copan by Carigua, was one of the big turning points of the war, where it looked like Calakmul might end up coming out on top with their alliance. And then Tikal is just like, we know you're down there. We know you're going to do your independent thing. Just don't cause trouble. They've got a ruler down there. Like, we know the list of their kings. One of their kings is this guy named Sky Cool. And he's building temples. It looks like at one point, by either the very late 700s or the early 800s, that they even make up with Copan. Like, hey, we're sorry we burned your gods and chopped your king's head off with an axe and betrayed you. Can we be friends again? And Copan at that point kind of had to. What's interesting about Copan, we do still have records from them. They've got a king that lasts a really long time. This guy named Yaxpasai Chaanyopat. He rules from 763 to like all the way up into the 800s. So he's got like a 50-year reign almost. Copan is probably one of the more unfortunate. Well, I guess not one of the more unfortunate. They still exist. They're not Dos Pilas. What's really kind of sad about Copan is that they were at one point like a big deal. Tikal had invested a lot into Copan. And it had paid out in spades. Like they were a really big, powerful city. Again, like Tikal was at the top, and then Copan had its own network, right? Like it had its like secondary vassals. Like this guy was just like, or the city of Copan was just, I mean, it was almost a powerhouse to itself. And they're still going to be around, right? Like they're still around at the end of the war. They've got rulers that are stable, but they're never the same. We actually have records on the buildings in Copan that show that the kings were even losing a lot of power. Specifically, we know this because some of the buildings, like in the dedicatory inscriptions for the buildings, say this was paid for by this noble. And it's not the king. And you can start seeing like this altar paid for by this noble. This piece of artwork paid for by this noble. And they're not the king. Because it looks like the kings of Copan had sort of been proven lacking. And the nobility were sort of going to usurp as much power as they could. It just occurred to me that Shane could have had a stroke during the stream and none of us would know. Because I'm saying things like Yaks Nauna Hien and Yaks Pasai Chanyo Paat. I think you would know if I were having a stroke. I would hope so. I would probably be much less coherent. But I do know that these names are tough, right? I understand that these names are weird, which is sort of why I even stopped putting them up, because I just sort of realized in the middle of the stream, I don't think anybody's going to remember these. What's up, Cryomera? How's it going? If you all are not already following Cryomera, Cryo is an amazing individual that you should totally go follow. Great person, super generous, amazing artwork, and has a stream that you would enjoy. If you like hanging out in my world and hearing about all of my nerdy adventures and stuff, Cryo has a lot of that stuff too. Don't follow me. I know nothing of history. You know a lot more of history than you think you do. I've heard you talk about especially Hawaiian culture and native culture of the regions thereof, and that's really cool history. And I appreciates the heck out of that. So you know more history than you think you do, right? Also, Copan loses its network of vassals. So all of the small little cities that were scattered around Copan, that were its sort of secondary vassals to Tikal, they all start declaring independence. So Copan goes from like, the assistant to the regional manager back down to basically a nothing. They're just another city in the larger Tikal world. So you're entering history student lurk mode now. Well, that's cool, Cryo. It's good to see you as always. I'm actually wrapping up. That is about all for me. Unless people have questions, as always, if anybody has questions about any of this stuff, or if you have point redemptions that you'd like to spend or use, now would be the time. Or if anybody just has any additional material. Yeah, I know. We've been going for about an hour and a half. I usually try to plan about an hour and a half's worth of material. And sometimes it stretches out because, we'll get a lot of lively conversation. Other times we'll just do what we got to do. The weather here is okay. I don't know how cold it is right now. It's probably dropping. Let's see. Hourly. It is, I don't know. Will you tell me what the temperature is? Temperature says 54, 54 Fahrenheit. So not so bad, but that's going to drop pretty fast. Yeah, in 2 hours it's going to be 39. And in 7 hours it's going to be 19. 8 hours it's going to be 18. So it's going to drop pretty fast. Noger wants to see the puppy. Let me call the puppy. I think I woke her up. Single digit gain represent. I don't think it's going to get down to single digits here. It's going to get down to the high teens, and that's about as far as it's going to go for us. So 18 degrees is like -4 Celsius. Oh, the puppy was asleep, and I woke her up. Here she comes. I hear her little toenails clacking on the wood. Oh, come see me. Your fan base wants to see you. Come here. Oh, we've got to stretch first because, no puppy activity can happen before we stretch. Come here. Come here. Come on. Come on. You can get up here. There we go. There's the puppy. Hello. You give me sugars? Where are you going? They want to see you. You have fans. Here, come here. Are you just going to leave now? Apparently, she is not feeling very much like the camera, so she's not really interested in pleasing her fans very much at the moment. So, apologies for the lame-o puppy appearance. Feels like -33. Holy crap! That's cold. It's gross like here, and it's gross and cold. Yeah, it rained all day Monday and Tuesday. No. Is that right? What's today? Thursday? Yeah, it rained all day Monday and Tuesday. And I'm not even joking. Like, it rained all day Monday and Tuesday. The sun came out right about the time that it was going down at about 5:30 or 6. And my wife even went, "Holy crap, it's the sun." And then yesterday it was okay yesterday. I think it got into the 60s yesterday. And it felt pretty good. It could have been cooler. We were under the house yesterday putting in insulation, which is the reason that I'm sore as heck today. Those of you not frozen from around us, you need to realize where Shane and I live, we don't get many sub-freezing days. It's very rare for us to get stretches. Like tomorrow, it's not supposed to be above freezing. I can't remember the last time that happened. If I had to guess, I would say the last time that happened was about 5 years ago. If I had to guess. maybe 4 years ago. It snowed about 4 years ago, so maybe it got that cold back then. It does not. We don't have very very cold days. I'm in the deep south. It gets very rarely cold down here. Sufficient doggo is sufficient. Sufficient shout out is also sufficient. Everybody go follow Noger because he's a cool dude. That's a sufficiency. But no, for real, you should go follow Noger. He's a pretty brilliant dude and breaks really complicated stuff in philosophy down to where everybody can understand it. Doesn't remain below freezing much past sunrise. Yeah, pretty much. Like it'll dip down and it'll freeze overnight, and the sun comes up and it warms back up again. All right. Other questions or point redemptions or such like that? Yeah, if you didn't know that Noger streamed. Oh yeah, man. Noger is one of the more interesting intellectual streamers on Twitch. And I'm not even saying that because he's like right here. He reads published philosophy papers and then explains them to you, which is fascinating stuff. Like last night, I was in his chat room while he was reading a paper on how we can tell whether or not a person that we're having a conversation with is making a moral intuitive leap, and whether or not we can trust our intuition. And the paper itself was really, really technically well written. I didn't care for the particular ways that he was making, or the author here, not Noger. The author was applying his arguments, but it's really fascinating stuff. It's really, really good stuff. I like it a lot. It makes me smarter. It pushes my brain to think in ways that it doesn't naturally think because I've been trained as history and sociology, and philosophy is just a different discipline, and I find it absolutely fascinating. Like for real, go follow Noger. He's a smart dude. There are 2 female Texan archaeology students digging into Call, and one says to the other, "We ain't gonna." Let me do my Texas. Don't mess with. We ain't gonna find anything, are we? To which the other replies, "Keep digging, honey. A good Mayan is hard to find." I love it. Some of them can be infuriating, indeed. You need to get back into academic stuff. If you ever want to research some stuff, let me know. I have access to a whole bunch of databases. I can just, I'll go do the first page of JSTOR and just dump it all and stuff for you if you ever want to. I'm not a smart dude. Cryo, again with the self-deprecation. Intelligence is the ability to apply knowledge in a way that is beneficial to yourself. And good gracious, Cryo, if anybody has ever seen your art, like, dude, it takes mad intelligence to make that kind of art, because not only are you doing stuff that is visually appealing, you have to do it in inverse, because like you're making stamps out of stuff, so you have to train your brain to work backwards, which is against the grain of the way that it's supposed to work. So don't come at me with "I'm not intelligent." No. That Texas accent is spot on. I have these little phrases that I use to get into accents, and my phrase for Texas accent is George Bush saying, "Don't mess with Texas." So if you heard me go, "Don't mess with Texas," that was me getting into my Texas accent. No, I use "bless your heart" for what I call the South Carolina tea drinking accent, which is like the most abrasive of Southern condescending accents. They're the ones that just talk like this. And honey, I promise you, there are people on earth that do talk like this, and they will say, "Oh, bless your heart." And it does not mean a nice thing. It means you're an idiot. South Carolina tea drinking accent. That's what I call it. I sent my children to Clemson. Congratulations. It is. It's very much a Southern FU. It is. Oh man. I used to have a point redemption for do an accent. Or do an impression. I really do like accents and impressions. I was very briefly a theater major, and I did theater for a long time. I really do like accents quite a bit. But people started abusing it and making really, really ridiculous requests, and I had to kill it because one of them was like Godzilla on a date trying to make up with Mothra after they've had a fight, and then they get interrupted by Flipper, who is Godzilla's secret lover. And I mean, I did it, which was horrible, but like at that point, no. I'm like, no. I'm not doing that anymore. There was always Rhett Butler who didn't give a darn. Indeed, Moose. Indeed. I had an explain art redemption, and it was also abused. It sucks the fun out of it. Yeah. It's like, I mean, I like doing that kind of stuff, and I like having interaction. And if there is something that would be a valuable point redemption, I would love to entertain that. I like people to feel like they have an actual input in the stream. I like people using channel points on a regular basis. I know people use them all the time around here, but I would love for them to be used more. So if there's something that you all think would be a valuable point redemption, I would absolutely be interested in hearing that. I don't like, and this isn't a slam to anybody, right? Not everybody's stream is as interactive as mine. Not every streamer wants to put up with all of the weirdo stuff that I'd be interested in putting up with. So this is not a slam to anybody. But as a personal viewer, right? I find myself sometimes having these giant piles of points, and I don't really know what to do with them. And I would think of things like, oh, it'd be cool if I could get the person to do this. But I like, who would listen to rando me like talk about stuff? I would listen to rando you. Like, if you have some ideas, let me know. And like, I always try to have a challenge stream going. And the one going right now is an all opinion hat challenge stream, which is good gravy. I'm actually worried about that stream, which is why I set the total so high. Wearing the opinion hat, I'm going to have to turn on mature content rating. I'm going to have to not save that VOD because it's potentially going to be weird. Like, me just giving my opinion about stuff, I'm going to get wound up. It's just going to happen, and I'm kind of worried about it. So, but that's what people wanted, right? And I enjoy feeding back and listening to the audience because I say this all the time, but like, for real, you all could be doing anything else right now, and you've decided to come hang out and listen to me run my mouth. So like, that's friggin' amazing. And I like to reciprocate that feeling. I could just do it on Discord. That's actually not that bad of an idea. Discord doesn't have TOS. That's interesting. But not everybody's on Discord. So, I don't know. We'll see. We've got a long way to get there. We're not even a third of the way through with it, I don't think. So, all right. So, do we have any other questions or point redemptions, or anybody want to ask anything else or do anything else? Otherwise, we're going to see who is streaming. And, I already know where we're going to go raid. When it is time to raid. Just yell a time and I'll be there. What's in the news? For that many points, it should be an opinions in an accent. um, shockingly, there isn't an all opinion hat channel on your Discord. There is a data and debate channel, but that one's actually got quite a few rules. The only channel on my entire Discord that has rules is the data and debate. Any news about Peru? Yeah. Who said what's the news? Moose, did you have anything specifically? I literally have only looked at AI Art News today on Twitter. Okay, so I can talk about whatever I want to then. I could talk about Peru. We've talked about that a few times. Just as a quick update, there's a lot of protests in Peru. The new president who got power because the Congress put the other president in prison and then swore the vice president in as president has not been going so well. There's been a lot of protests. Supporters of the last president have been rioting. People have been put under military, police state, basically. That Peru right now is a police state. And yesterday, the new president kicked a whole bunch of people out of cabinet and shuffled cabinet around. It doesn't look very good in Peru right now. Not so great in Peru right now, unfortunately. Zelensky came to talk to Congress yesterday. Vladimir Zelensky, president of Ukraine. Kiev is the capital of Ukraine. I don't know. I guess he's technically president of Kiev as well, but he's the president of all of Ukraine. Came to America to address a joint session of Congress yesterday, and gave a pretty blunt speech. And I appreciate that. Dude has a really good speechwriter. I don't know if he writes it himself or if he has a lot of help with it, but he said a lot of stuff that was really direct, like, hey, America, thank you very much for helping us, but if you stop helping us, Russia's going to win. Which is accurate, right? And I guess that sort of dovetails into this other thing where, of course, as soon as Zelensky did that, there was a press conference afterwards where President Biden said, we have... we're going to continue offering support for Ukraine and stuff like that. And of course, Putin's response to that was, if America gives support to Ukraine, that is going to be a provocation, and we don't know what we're going to happen. Russia's only response right now seems to be, if you keep us from destroying Ukraine, we're going to destroy Ukraine harder. That's kind of what Putin is saying. Like, if you give any aid to Ukraine, we're going to nuke them. Which is just, I don't know, man. I'm very curious to see how many people know the truth, new here, no idea where this channel leans. I don't know what you mean. The truth about what? Like, the truth is out there. I want to know. Like X-Files kind of truth? Or are we talking about objective truth, like capital T truth? Are we talking about, like, I don't know, the truth about watching? I'm watching, no, I want to see. Okay. I don't know what you're watching for. I mean, you're welcome. You're welcome. There's a pretty good interview with him by David Letterman on Netflix. I have not seen that one. What is it on Netflix? Like, does David Letterman have a show on Netflix? If we can't have it, no one will. Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, The Shrug. All right. What else? I was trying to do just kind of a quick headlines run. There's a really big earthquake in California, but they've got all the power back on. Well, I say really big. It was like 6.4, which is fairly large. Polar vortex is kicking everybody's butt right now. Like where I lean is there is truth and there is manipulation on either side. They think the opposite. I have some ideas that would be considered conservative. I have some ideas that would be considered progressive. I don't vote for one party across the board. When I talk about historical stuff, I try to talk about it factually based, as interpreted by published, credible people in the field. I do a lot of reading. Of course, I clearly have opinions. When I'm giving my opinion, I usually wear a little hat that's literally called the opinion hat, so that you know that I'm giving an opinion. But when people ask what's in the news, I literally just tell you what's in the news. I might lose electricity tonight due to the storm. Yeah, Lumpy. Good to see you. Hope everything is well in your world, and I hope that you don't get super snowed in. It's a one-on-one talk show, but this was a standalone episode special. Okay, cool. I'll have to look that up. Just watching Shane and hanging out. Polar vortex. Weatherman said this cold air came across the North Pole from Siberia. It was negative 78 last week in Irkutsk. Holy crap. That's crazy. Irkutsk, by the way, over here. Ooh, where did Google Earth? Chill out. Yo, man. Calm down. What are you doing, Google Earth? My mouse is going just bonkers right now. Calm down. Irkutsk is like this region over here in Siberia. It's not a warm place. It's a cool place. They say it gets colder. You're bundled up now. Wait till you get older. Work is closed tomorrow due to impending ice. That's kind of scary. Negative 78 is cold enough to work with I don't know what that is. Something with lithium in it. Nitrogen. I don't know what that is, Lumpy. Lumpy, by the way, has a PhD in chemistry, and you should go give him a follow so that he can educate you on all of the cool lab experiment stuff that he does. That's like literally bending molecules. I appreciate you for not reading off what MSNBC says is right. Yeah, I mean, I read all the stuff, and then I tend to make my own mind up. I mean, both sides of the media have a bent. Onyx, we were talking about the Mayans. We started at about 2 hours ago, and we had about an hour and a half discussion about Mayans, specifically the period of time between 700 and 800, and we talked mostly about the Third Calakmul-Tikal War. And so we did that for about an hour and a half plus, and now we're just sort of vibing here at the end. N-butyl lithium, a very strong base, but it needs to be stored at negative 78 C to avoid side reactions. Because that first line of elements like lithium, they have a very high reaction because they give up that one electron really fast on the outside. I took chemistry 2 in high school. I don't know if that's true for N-butyl lithium, though. Yes, I teach history and sociology at college here in the States. One of the more fun parts of my high school career was when one of my teachers had a block of solid potassium that was kept in a Ziploc bag in a big mason jar full of vegetable oil. And he would take it out and fill a bucket full of water and just throw a chunk of that lithium into the water, and it would just that was really fun. Mineral oil. Maybe. Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Worst tanker ever. It's not so bad. Not so bad. Uh, we are wrapping up though. Yeah, it was mineral oil. I just knew it was oily stuff. It wasn't water. Potassium when exposed to air, kaboom. Used to make pipe bombs. Oh well. Um. Yeah. Okay. Interesting pastime. I hope. I hope you have all of your digits. That's a volatile pastime. Anyway, I think it's about time to raid. We're kind of getting to the silly point, which is okay. I don't mind the silly point, but if we you do have a few stories, and Viper's just like, I grew up in Belfast. We don't use pipes here. We use cars. Um, you managed to grow out of it. I made sparkler bombs, but that's about as explosive as I got. Someone is going to go to college, taking chem plus lab. Cool, bio plus lab, calculus. Oh wow, that's a pretty heavy semester. He's got all A's. Hey, that's impressive. That's a bunch of stuff. 3 labs and or 2 labs and a calculus. That I would not advise my students to take 2 labs and a calculus at the same time. Um, but you know, there we go. Pipe bombs is a good old Irish pastime. I'm thinking fishy shoal. I'm not exactly sure what fishy shoal is. Um, I'm lost on that one. All right. Anyway, we're going to go do a raid. Time to raid. We're going to go raid. Did I click the button to go raid? I did not click the button to go raid. We're going to go raid David Peterson, who is a big old friend of the chat, good personal friend as well. He's the author and illustrator of Mouse Guard, which is a comic book that is one of my favorite comic books. So, pretty cool dude. When we get to David's chat, our battle cry is adventure. And if you have any of those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those in the chat. And we'll see you next time. I hope. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I hope that I can stream tomorrow afternoon a little bit. I have been itching to work on models. I have not worked on a model in about 2 weeks, and I really, really want to work on a model. So I hope that we can do that tomorrow, probably significantly earlier than I normally stream, about what time I normally stream on the weekend. So probably like 13 or 1400 Central Standard Time. So keep an eyeball on the Discord. But until then, until next time, see everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Take it easy.